My stepchildren demanded I apologize to their biological dad for overstepping. I'm Elias, born in 1983, in a quiet part of Ibadan. Back in 2016, when I was 33, I thought I had finally found what every man dreams of: a family to pour my heart into. I had my job, my health, and a home that felt too big for one person. Then I met Lydia and her two kids, Mia and Daniel, and my life took on new meaning. I'm sharing this now because sometimes we give all we have to love that never truly saw us. If you're listening, drop your location below and tell me, have you ever loved someone who forgot how to love you back? I met Lydia at a friend's birthday dinner. She laughed easily, that kind of laughter that fills a room without trying. She was 35, divorced, raising two children who were still trying to understand why their father had disappeared from their lives. There was something strong but tired about her, the kind of woman who had carried too much alone. When she told me about Daniel, who was 10 at the time, and Mia, who was 8, I didn't hesitate. I didn't just fall in love with her. I fell in love with the idea of becoming the man those children could look up to. The first time I met them, Daniel was suspicious. He crossed his small arms and said, "Are you going to leave like my dad did?" I remember crouching to his level and saying softly, "Not unless you chase me away." He didn't smile right away, but Mia giggled behind him, her tiny hands clutching her mother's dress. That day, something shifted inside me. I didn't realize then that I had just stepped into a role that would define almost a decade of my life. Lydia and I dated for 2 years before we married. By the time I moved in, the kids had already made space for me in their world. Daniel started calling me Eli instead of Mr., and Mia began to slip her drawings into my work bag, stick figures of all 4 of us under a crooked sun. I remember one she drew on my birthday. She wrote, "To my daddy, Eli, who fixes everything." I cried quietly that night when everyone had gone to bed. We became a family in every way that mattered. I attended every school recital, every parent-teacher meeting. I was the one who taught Daniel how to ride a bike, and I was the one who stayed up all night when Mia caught malaria. When Lydia's car broke down, I sold mine to buy her a new one so she could get to work safely. I didn't keep score. Love doesn't work like that. I was building something I thought was forever. 3 years into our marriage, Lydia and I made it official that I legally adopted Daniel and Mia. The kids were thrilled. Daniel said, "Now you're really my dad," and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I can still remember signing those papers at the courthouse. The clerk smiled and said, "Congratulations, sir. You've given them a father." I smiled back, unaware that life has a cruel way of testing what we build. Our home was warm, filled with laughter and noise. On Sunday mornings, Mia would help me cook pancakes, while Lydia played her old gospel CD. Daniel would drag me outside to kick a ball around, even when I was exhausted from work. We had our silly moments, like the time Mia tried to bake cookies and used salt instead of sugar, and we all ate them anyway, pretending they were delicious. Lydia used to joke that our home felt like a sitcom, loud, messy, but full of love. Financially, I made sure they never lacked anything. I opened college savings accounts for both kids, paid for their extracurriculars, and even took us on family vacations once a year. I wasn't just doing it for show. I genuinely wanted them to have everything I never did growing up. My father died when I was 12, and my mother struggled to raise me alone. Maybe that's why I poured everything into being the kind of father I wished I had. Lydia and I had our share of arguments. She sometimes felt I was too strict with the kids, and I felt she let them get away with too much. But no matter how tense things got, I always believed love would hold us together. I never imagined that one day, that same love would become the weapon used to cut me apart. When Daniel turned 17, something in him began to shift. He started asking questions about his biological father, Aaron. I had no issue with that. I understood the curiosity. I even helped Lydia look for old photos to show him, but I could sense her unease. She told me once, "Eli, if Aaron ever shows up, promise me you'll stay calm." I laughed it off. Back then, I didn't think the past could reach into our present. By the time Mia was 15, she too started wondering what kind of man her father was. "Did he ever love us?" she asked me one night after dinner. I wanted to tell her the truth, that love doesn't vanish like smoke unless it was never really there. But I couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, I said, "Sometimes people break before they can hold others properly." She nodded, quietly, and whispered, "I'm glad you stayed." Life carried on smoothly after that. Daniel got accepted into a private university, and I paid his full tuition up front. Mia made it into a competitive soccer academy and was thriving. Lydia was proud. We were all proud. For a while, it felt like we had beaten the odds. We were proof that love can rebuild what was once broken. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that were forming beneath the surface. Lydia's tone toward me began to change, not cruelly, but distant. The kids, too, became more guarded. I noticed them whispering sometimes. When I walked into the room, I convinced myself it was just teenage behavior. I told myself I was overthinking it. I didn't know then that a storm was slowly brewing, one that would dismantle everything I had built with my bare hands. Still, I kept showing up. That's what fathers do. When Daniel needed help preparing for his driving test, I spent every evening teaching him. When Mia wanted a new soccer uniform, I drove across town to find the right size. Every time they said thank you, it warmed me because I believed they meant it. My favorite memory from those years was one Christmas morning. We all wore matching pajamas, took silly photos, and sang along to carols. Lydia gave me a mug that said, "World's Best Dad." And Daniel laughed, saying, "You actually are." I believed him. I really did. If I had known that love could evaporate so quietly, like breath on glass, maybe I would have been more careful with my heart. But love, real love, doesn't come with warning labels. You give it fully, or not at all. Those 8 years were the best and hardest years of my life. I raised those kids like they were my own blood. I believed in us. I believed that even though I didn't share their DNA, I had earned something stronger. Their trust, their loyalty, their love. But love, as I would later learn, can shift like sand when someone new or old comes back to stir it. I had no idea that soon everything I had built, every bedtime story, every sacrifice, every silent prayer would be questioned, twisted, and thrown back at me. And it would all begin with a knock on our front door. When I opened the door that evening, I didn't expect to come face to face with the ghost of someone else's past. Standing there was a tall man with a faint beard, holding a wrinkled duffel bag, and an expression I couldn't read. "You must be Elias," he said, his voice low but steady. "I'm Aaron." For a few seconds, I didn't move. Lydia appeared behind me, almost immediately, her hand flying to her mouth. "Aaron?" she gasped. The air thickened between us, the way it does before rain. The children, hearing the commotion, came running. When Mia saw him, she froze. Daniel whispered, "Dad," a word that stabbed me deeper than I expected. I stepped aside, letting him in, because it felt like the right thing to do. For 8 years I had been the father, the provider, the steady one. I thought being secure in that role meant nothing could threaten it. But as soon as Aaron walked in, something subtle changed in the air of our home. Lydia couldn't stop looking at him. The children hovered close, as though they were standing near a long-lost promise. Lydia explained that Aaron had moved back into town after years away. He wanted to reconnect. I watched Daniel's eyes light up, and Mia smiled shyly at him, the way she used to look at me years ago. I tried to be gracious, to let them have their moment, but a quiet ache formed in my chest. I reminded myself this wasn't about me. Aaron apologized, said he'd made mistakes, that he'd been young and stupid, that he'd missed his children every day. It was almost convincing, almost, but the part that gnawed at me was how easily they all accepted his word. He didn't have to earn it. He just showed up. And suddenly the air was full of forgiveness. I spent 8 years building bridges, and this man waltzed in and crossed them as if he'd laid the first stones himself. Sometimes he'd pick up the kids for lunch. Other times Lydia would invite him for dinner just to catch up. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd disappear again once he got bored. But deep down, I sensed something shifting, not just in the children, but in Lydia too. Daniel started comparing me to him in subtle ways. Aaron said he could have helped me with my car project. He used to fix engines when he was younger, he'd say, glancing at me, like he wanted to see how I'd react. Mia started dressing differently, asking Aaron about old family traditions she'd never cared about before. And Lydia, she laughed again, in that familiar way, but not with me. I told myself that being threatened by a man who'd abandoned them years ago was beneath me. Still, every time I saw Aaron's car in the driveway, something inside me twisted. One night I confronted Lydia. "What exactly is happening here?" She looked at me calmly and said, "They just need to know where they came from, Eli. You can't replace their father." Her words hit like ice water. "Replace?" I repeated. "I never tried to replace anyone. I just filled the gap he left behind." She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Maybe that's the problem," she said quietly, and walked away. From that night, the distance between us grew into a canyon. The kids became colder. Daniel stopped calling me Dad. He started saying Elias, as if to remind me of my place. Mia, once so affectionate, barely hugged me anymore. One evening, I overheard them whispering in the hallway. Daniel said, "Aaron says Elias shouldn't have adopted us. He says it wasn't his right." Mia agreed softly. "He said it's like we were stolen." That word stolen echoed in my mind for days. I tried to talk to them. "Listen," I said during dinner one evening. "I never wanted to take anything from you. I just wanted to give you the love and stability you deserved." But Daniel snapped. "Then why did you try to be our dad? You could have just been Mom's husband." Lydia said nothing. She just stared at her plate. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the adoption papers framed on the wall. Something I once saw as a badge of love now turned into a reminder of resentment. As the weeks passed, the tension reached breaking point. Aaron became a frequent visitor. He started offering to help out fixing small things around the house, taking the kids shopping, even joining them at family events. Once, at Daniel's school ceremony, he sat beside Lydia while I stood at the back. When they posed for photos, I was the one behind the camera. A few days later, Lydia came to me with that same uneasy look she'd had when I first met her. "Eli," she began, "the kids feel uncomfortable. They think you're trying too hard." I blinked, trying to process her words. "Uncomfortable, Lydia?" I raised them. My voice trembled. "Everything they have in their school, their future, it's because I wanted them to have the best." She looked down, almost ashamed, but still said softly, "They just need some space." Space. That word hurt more than silence. A week later, the children confronted me. They stood together in the living room, Daniel holding a piece of paper, Mia behind him with her arms crossed. "We talked with Mom and Aaron," Daniel began, "and we think you should apologize to him." "eBay." I stared at him, my heart pounding. Apologize? For what? For overstepping, he said firmly. For trying to take his place. You had no right to do that. The room went silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock. I looked at Lydia, but she didn't meet my eyes. Daniel, I said slowly, for 8 years I've loved you as my son. I've never tried to erase your father. I just wanted you to feel loved. Mia shook her head. Aaron says real love doesn't buy things to make up for guilt. eBay. I felt something inside me break. I wasn't angry. Not yet, just numb. Is that really what you think? I asked softly. Neither of them answered. I nodded, walked upstairs, and closed my bedroom door. For hours, I sat there surrounded by all the things that once symbolized our family photos, school certificates, little notes from when the kids were younger. Each one felt like a lie now. I realized something painful. That night, sometimes love can be rewritten by those who never understood it. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I smiled at my colleagues, pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was already making decisions. Quiet ones, heavy ones. Aaron kept showing up. He even had the nerve to shake my hand one day and say, "No hard feelings, man. The kids just needed their dad." I looked him straight in the eye and replied, "Then I hope you're ready to be one." He smiled like he didn't understand what I meant. That weekend, Lydia informed me that Aaron wanted to move closer so he could spend more time with the children. She sounded almost relieved, like she believed this would solve everything. I didn't argue. I simply nodded, the decision already forming in my mind, the one that would change all their lives forever. The house that once echoed with laughter now carried the sound of betrayal in every corner. The walls seemed to remember the truth, even when the people inside had forgotten. I had loved them all deeply, and that love was now a quiet ghost watching me from every photo frame. I realized that night, as I packed away a few of my things, that sometimes the best way to teach people what they had is to let them live without it. And that's exactly what I plan to do. The kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, but signals the end of something sacred. I woke up one morning and knew it was time. I wasn't going to beg anyone to see the truth. Love should never need defending. His name was Victor, a good man who'd handled my adoption paperwork years before. When I told him I wanted to reverse it, he paused for a long time. "Elias, are you sure?" he asked softly. "You raised those children. You'll always be their father in every sense that matters." I exhaled slowly. "I thought so too, Victor, but they've made it clear that they don't want that title tied to me anymore. So let's make it official." Over the following days, I gathered every document that tied me to their lives. Adoption papers, college savings account details, insurance records, school sponsorships, everything. It was surreal, sorting through years of love that now looked like transaction. Each receipt, each tuition payment, each hospital bill, a memory turned into evidence of devotion. I compiled it all into a neat binder, labeling every page. At the front I wrote a simple title: "The Cost of Raising Love." The total at the bottom came to $347,000. I didn't write it to gloat. I wrote it to remind them that love had weight, that it had been paid in full, not in cash alone, but in sacrifice, time, and sleepless nights. The night I decided to leave, I cooked dinner one last time. Lydia and the kids were in the living room, laughing at something Aaron had said over the phone. I stood there in the kitchen, listening to their laughter float through the walls. It used to warm me. Now it only sounded like a song I wasn't welcome to sing anymore. When dinner was ready, I called them to the table. Lydia came first, followed by Mia, then Daniel, who was still scrolling on his phone.
I waited until they sat down before placing the binder on the table. Daniel asked, frowning. That, I said quietly, is everything I've ever given to this family. Lydia's brow furrowed. Eli, what do you mean? It's all there for every tuition fee, medical bill, birthday gift, insurance premium, family trip. Everything. 8 years worth of being your husband, your father, your safety net. Daniel scoffed. Why are you keeping track like it's a business deal? Because apparently, love without blood isn't love, it's a favor. And I think it's time I stop giving favors to people who see me as a placeholder. I slid the binder toward her. Aaron can have it. It's his responsibility now. I'm transferring the kids' accounts to his name. He'll handle their tuition, their health insurance, everything. I've also informed the schools and the bank. Mia's eyes widened. Wait. I turned to her. You wanted your real dad to take his place. Remember, now he can. For a moment, the room fell silent. Lydia began to cry quietly. Daniel's expression hardened, but his voice trembled. So you're just giving up on us? I shook my head. No, Daniel, I'm doing what you asked. I'm stepping back. I'm giving you what you thought you were missing. They didn't say anything after that. The silence stretched like glass, sharp and delicate. I picked up my keys, walked to the front door, and paused. I hope someday you understand that being a father isn't about sharing DNA. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. But you'll learn that now, the hard way. And I walked out. That same night, I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It was quiet, too quiet, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waiting for someone to need me. The next morning, I sent a message to Aaron. The kids are yours now. You'll find everything you need in the binder. I wish you luck. You'll need it. He didn't reply. Weeks passed, and life began unfolding without me. I heard through mutual friends that Aaron had moved into Lydia's house temporarily, but it didn't last long. Managing 2 teenagers, their school fees, their habits. It all started catching up with him. Within 3 months, the college payments bounced. Daniel had to withdraw from school. Mia had to quit her soccer academy. Aaron tried to pick up extra work, but things spiraled. His landlord eventually evicted them when rent fell behind. They ended up moving into Aaron's mother's basement. All 4 of them, Aaron, Lydia, Daniel and Mia, living under one roof that smelled of regret. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering, but I did feel clarity. Sometimes, life teaches lessons no speech can deliver. Months later, Lydia called. I didn't answer. She texted instead. Eli, please, the kids are sorry. They didn't understand what they were saying. Can we talk? I read it 3 times before deleting it. A week later, Daniel emailed me. The subject line simply read, I get it now. The message was short. I shouldn't have said those things. Aaron's not who I thought he was. I'm sorry. I wish you'd come back. I didn't reply. Some lessons are best left to settle in silence. Mia's message came last. I miss you, Daddy. Eli, I wish I could take it back. That one hurt, but I still didn't answer. I sat there, phone in hand, whispering a prayer for her, that she'd grow into someone who values consistency more than fantasy. Lydia eventually lost the house. She took on double shifts at a diner to stay afloat. Aaron disappeared again, just like before, history repeating itself, except this time, they all saw the truth with their own eyes. As for me, I rebuilt, slowly, quietly. I focused on myself for the first time in years. Therapy helped, so did writing. I started journaling about the experience, not out of bitterness, but out of gratitude, because I realized something powerful. Even when people fail you, the love you gave wasn't wasted. It taught you what you're capable of. I met someone new, a gentle woman named Claire. She knows my story. All of it. She told me once, "You didn't lose a family, you freed yourself from being taken for granted." Maybe she's right. Still, some nights I lie awake, remembering Mia's laughter, or the way Daniel used to hug me after every soccer game. Love doesn't vanish, it just changes its shape. If you're listening right now, maybe you've been where I was, giving everything to people who didn't see your worth until you were gone. I want you to know something. It's okay to let go. It's okay to protect your peace. You're not heartless for walking away from people who only remember your value when it's convenient. I lost a lot of time, money and memories, but I kept something more important, my self-respect. And if I had to do it all again, I'd still choose to love the way I did, because even if they forgot, I know what it means to truly show up. And one day, when they're older, when the echoes of their choices settle into quiet reflection, they'll remember too. Sometimes, the hardest act of love is walking away when you're no longer respected. It's okay to demand peace instead of pain, dignity instead of dependency. People often realize too late that stability is a gift, not a guarantee. Hold your self-worth close, even when others forget it, because love, when given honestly, never goes to waste. It just returns home to the heart that gave.